not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history, what body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psychology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
On February the 16th, 2018, this is a Friday Jobber, our magazine show coming to you from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. Old Boston Red himself here, a little late, but nonetheless, we'll get it done. What we'll start out here with how this whole ecosystem of right-wing fanaticism has entered the American mainstream. We talk about it all the time. We have our people from the University of Virginia, that's at Charlottesville, Virginia. Of course, they had a murder there of Heber Heyer, that also as a result of this. But firstly, we'll go out to the plains, the Midwest state of Oklahoma. The restaurant owner here, said he wants to serve gays or African-American customers. This person has been in business for 44 years, he says, and he claims he can spot a freak or a gay person. Well, I guess he's clairvoyant. Who knows? But anyway, he has been around, and it's generally known that he is a bigot. And people have not challenged him. The law enforcement authorities in Oklahoma have not challenged him. Their Human Rights Commission, I'm not sure if the city or the small town, Enid, Oklahoma, has a Human Rights Commission, but they do probably have a state Human Rights Commission. Anyway, this fool made national headlines in the Huffington Post. He was in there, said he received over 1,000 phone calls since the story aired from KOFR TV, Oklahoma City, and he was on CNN, so everybody knows about Jones and his Charos restaurant. It's a steak place, and also they have alcohol there, so he has everything going there. But not only does he dislike African Americans and people that happen to be gay, he also doesn't want disabled people in. I had some customer that's been around for a very, very long time named Matt Garr. Gar's in a wheelchair with disabilities. He doesn't like certain people, race, color, ethnicity. Latinos he threw in there. I guess that's news to this fellow named Cruz down in Florida that killed 17 people, wounded people there, but it's all in the same ecosystem. The NRA is in the ecosystem with Gary James. James has a T-shirt with the N-word on it and various other things on his T-shirt. And nobody said anything about it. They point out, and you'll hear this at the conclusion of our cast, that no one in the town has filed a complaint against him. But generally how this works with most states, a Human Rights Commission themselves can institute a complaint. There's a military base evidently there. They put his place off limits to military personnel. So he has had a drop in customers, but an upsurge in T-shirts. And this is the kind of fellow that is very susceptible to the present political climate. He also has something on there about Muslims, etc. And this is more pervasive than one would think. So you link all of these people up together with a common ideology. We don't know if he's an evangelical Christian or not, but they go in the same pot there. And we'll get to Scott Pruitt, since he's from that state, and how he is in the same ecosystem. But we go down to Florida, and the killing down there by this character named Cruz. Now, Cruz is a Latino, evidently, and he was out training with a white supremacist group, period. So he became a gun nut there, and he purchased his AR 40, was it 46, 47? Anyway, it's a knockoff of the M16, a civilian version of it. But nonetheless, he purchased it legally. He could buy ammo. He had been expelled from that particular school. A troubled individual, lost his parents, etc., according to his attorney, who is an African American. But this guy is doomed. He's going to the cooker in Florida. But the problem there is the Governor Scott and these people ran basically on the same platform. Support the Second Amendment. You haven't heard so much about the Second Amendment. We used to hear about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. You can have firearms, yes, but the amendment meant at one time that it was for a militia, but that was in the 1700s. Has nothing to do today, and that just shows you how a history itself can be prostituted off to anything in interpretation to the courts at the particular time. Now, 5 or 10 years from now, the courts could reinterpret the Second Amendment, and then you would have your gun laws in. But you will not in this current ecosystem that you have now. And this has been around for a very, very long time. It just did not start with the administration of DJ Trump. He is sort of the glue that has put it all together. You had the Gary Jameses around, and they've been Republicans forever. And he also disparages Democrats. So you can understand basically what this is all about. The Republicans have found, as they say, a tapping point there, so they can get the Jameses in, they can get the Cruzes in. The white supremacists will take in a Latino if they think he is instrumental to them. Now, the FBI is all over that investigation in Florida. But will not have any sensible, quote-unquote, gun laws as long as the NRA, the Koch brothers, that elect the kinds of people that they elect. And it goes beyond that in many of the Rust Belt states, people have been fooled because they have been trained to think that people on welfare are subhuman unless they're on there themselves. So then you get into various programs like Medicare, which many people in those areas and in places like Enid, Oklahoma, are recipients of, and various other things. Social Security, I don't know the demographics of the town, but I would assume there are a number of people that have, quote-unquote, as senior citizens, as in many of these small towns. So this is kind of the backdrop of what you have. Looking at a little bit about the town, it's been a hotbed for republicanism for a very, very long time, very right-wing community, farming, and their claim to fame is a military base, which is basically the lifeblood of the place. If the military base left, they would have some major financial problems. Anyway, let's link this back to Scott Pruitt. This is the whole idea of the story here, is to get to him. He's the EPA czar, and this is from none other than the union leader in New Hampshire. Conservative paper, not as conservative as it was under Mr. Lamb. Here's why he flies first class to talk to Superfund in New Hampshire. The Environmental Protection Administrator, who is out of Oklahoma, and he used to be the Attorney General, I believe he was, and he sued the EPA. Now he's director of it. Said security decisions made by others have dictated he flies first class or on military jets at taxpayers' expense. Unfortunately, we had some incidents on traveling dating back to when I first started serving in March, April time frame. He said in an interview with the union leader. So on Tuesday, I guess the date on this article is the 13th by Michael Cosinu. Anyway, we live in a very toxic environmental, political, and practically around issues of the environment, he said, who confirmed he flies first class from Washington area to Boston to reach New Hampshire. We reached a point where there is not much civility in the marketplace. And it creates, creates some issues, and the security detail, the level of protection is determined by the level of threat. Now, we had from the DJ Trump himself that the Secret Service agents shouldn't carry guns. Now, this is the extent to which this ecosystem can push people in. He's flying first class because in first class they separate in business class from a coach. And, of course, his security people sat behind him. The Post reported, this is the Washington Post, that taxpayers funded at least $90,000 for Pruitt and his aides by flying one stretch last June. It includes first-class seats, rides on military papers. I'm not involved, he claims, in these decisions. Now, this is very similar to the new line from the Trump administration on Porter. They claimed that the security clearance, because the FBI said they had finished it up, there is a White House security office that they claim had not finished his approval for security clearance there that's run by career people before he resigned. Pruitt questioned what the Obama administration accomplished environmentally. Everybody looks at the past administration as being the environmental savior, he said. He said 40% of the country lives in areas that don't meet air quality standards, covering 120 million people. You have more sites on Superfund lists when they left office than when they came in. I don't doubt that, because the problem is that many of these sites are being discovered that are being polluted because of policies like Pruitt is promoting. Now, I just ask you objectively, what did they do to improve the environment compared to what we're doing? Well, first of all, they have cut back on the number of workers at the Environmental Protection Agency. They have decided that climate change is not an issue. There's a long, long list. He says he wants to get Superfund sites cleaned up more quickly than in the past. This is just crazy. Tom Urban, he's the vice president of New Hampshire, vice president and New Hampshire director of Conservation Law Foundation, said the Obama and Trump administrations differ on how they view science, and it's just what we said. I think it's fair to say the current administration in many ways is outright abandoning science. I don't doubt that because science does not favor their particular viewpoint. He also met with Chris Sanu and visited the Central Paper in Manchester. We discussed a wide range of topics facing New Hampshire, and it's critical that our priorities are heard, the governor said there. This Sanu is a relative of Sanu that was around during Reagan. I'm pleased to hear that the EPA agrees to expedite the bedrock water table testing to further ensure that the Seacoast drinking water has not been contaminated by a Coakley landfill. That's in Northampton. I'm confident the state and our towns will have positive relations with the ESPN. The governor also discussed eradicating lead poisoning there in New Hampshire. I like the matter-of-fact, no BS approach to his responses, said Nibling, a partner in the consulting firm Innovative Natural Resources Solutions, and whatever that is. The White House plans to cut and this is where the actual part comes in here. The White House plans to cut the EPA's budget by 23% next fiscal year. Cuts a swap through the EPA's personnel and programs in a way that are going to harm the public and public health in the long term. That is from Halstead, a spokesman for the Environmental Defense Fund. Former Governor Schwarzenegger of California, Republican, recently said that Pruitt only represents a special interest. He should be removed immediately, according to news reports. There's no doubt about that. Pruitt and James. Pruitt, who also visited the Mohawk Tannery Superfund site, that's in Nashua, Wisconsin, said he wants his agency to work with industry more than in prior years. What that is a code word for going along with industry, the ones that are responsible for creating those super sites. I believe most states, most citizens, most companies, most industries want to protect the air they breathe, the water they drink, and why this agency, the EPA, or any agency would treat them as adversaries is wrong-headed. Well, that's insanity. We will prosecute bad actors, and we've already with the Department of Justice. But there's the issue, why do you start? Now, we see this in this administration with the Consumer Protection Agency, the same thing. They are not going to institute any activity. And this is the unfortunate situation where citizen activism comes in, organization, grassroots organization, for the 2018 elections and 2020 elections. The people have to get back in the business of electing people that will move a pro-people before profits administration. Pruitt said more work needs to be done to clean up higher than allowed levels of phosphonates are PEOAs and phosphate sulfuric acid found around the St. Gobain Performance Plastic site in Merrimack, New Hampshire. And the Coakley landfill. Anyway, it's a major concern. Major concerns for me and major concerns for the agency lied. The EPA's health advisory dated November the 16th said studies on animals show that exposure above certain levels may result in adverse health effects, including developmental effects to fetuses during pregnancies for certain cancers. So that sort of rounds it off there. You have James out in Eden, Oklahoma, this Pruitt guy, a spokesman for industry. And the only way that you are going to eradicate these types of people is get them out of office, period. And this is an unfortunate situation that occurs here with many, many situations. Let us go now. Let me see. This is from the Washington Post. We sort of moved off of that. The Black Panther is a revelation, but is also a reminder of what has been missing. This is by Anne Hornaday in the Washington Post. When the Black Panther, of course, arrives in the cinemas this weekend, one sure thing, that will be tears. I doubt that very seriously. A long-awaited adaptation of Marvel Comics books to feature an African-American superhero. The film will be greeted by tears and relief that it's finally here. Some tears will be a joy, that is, of a beloved property that has been adopted. Imagination bold visual style. Some tears will be of pride at the sight of a movie dominated by strong, smart, funny, beautiful characters and actors of African descent. Others will be spontaneous emotional response to the Black Panther story and the subtext, including moments of personal betrayal or loss, as well as reflections on a painful legacy of colonialism and depossession. But some tears might also be of grief, because as palatable as a celebratory joy and sheer artistry that defines the Black Panther, there lies an unspoken absence, of course, that are no less real for those being diffused or virtually fashionable. The lush, Afrocentric, iconographic on the screen, iconograph on the screen underlines just how constricted these images had been throughout most of American cinematic history, at enormous cost not just to African American spectators, but to what she calls white ones, or Europeans, deprived of untold visuals and narrative riches. Starting out here with the founding of American cinema, they underestimated, it's not underestimated, suggests that American cinema was born on the backs of African bodies. The Birth of a Nation, that was a D.W. Griffith fable of Reconstruction, that helped create cinematic grammar featuring European actors in a blackface, and acted a narrative toxic image of formerly enslaved Africans running amok in South Carolina's state house, raping quote-unquote European women, and finally being vanquished by the hero of the Ku Klux Klan, which was basically its predecessor, later inheritors, this Florida white supremacist group that Cruz was running around with. For them, if black characters were featured all in American films, they were either the butt of humiliating humor, demoralized as criminal, sex-craved savages to be feared. Such breakout stars, remember Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was a fighter for people, particularly working people. Dorothy Dandridge and Sidney Poitier proved to be exception to the rule, but even those positive images, and it's very important to remember that Paul Robeson, an excellent lawyer, football player, opera star, etc., dedicated his music to the people. He was blacklisted, thrown out of various places where he was able to sing. He was a member of the Communist Party of the United States. Black Americans were predators or some kind of patronized subordinate or sham figures in between. What we are missing were the depictions of quadrennial life, love, and work that most idealized and escapist European audience have long taken for granted, mirroring and reinforcing their experience. The African community, they're using black, I'm substituting African community, has always produced these images for itself, and with works of film such as Oscar, I never did pronounce his name correctly, and Spencer Williams, as well as commercial portrayals of photographers and amateur snapshots and the movies, but they are more accurately depictions, which, while nourishing for the community that created them, were largely invisible to European audiences. What this means basically here is, if European audiences don't see it, it's not legitimate. In the dominant narrative of medium or moderate era. Well, this goes back to this whole idea of multiculturalism, diversity. You have a world out there with billions of people that are not Europeans, period. And those kinds of cinema will be seen, no doubt about that, period. It wasn't just the blackness that was being defined by the excretion of stereotypes and insults. It was so-called whiteness, as Ava DuVernay illustrated in her documentary of 13 about popular culture informed contemporary attitudes towards crime and punishment. The culture of devaluing black bodies was an effective way not only to reinforce institutionalized racism, but it also reassures European audiences that these structures were necessary to prevent their on the question virtue and supremacy. Entered the Black Panther, directed by Ryan Coogler, a rapturous depiction of black excellence happens to arrive the same week as Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's portraits unveiled at the National Gallery. Anyway, let me finish this up here. The substance and symbolism of the Black Panther invites viewers into what for many will be a novel aesthetic sensibility. It's playtext and textures and visual references rooted in a continent that for far too long has been depicted as a backdrop for imperialist adventure or white redemption. The fact that a bona fide Hollywood blockbuster promises to break records at the box office this weekend, featuring a nearly all-black cast, presents a cosmopolitan rebuff to discredited assumptions that European audiences won't accept heroes who don't look like them. Well, that has been a big situation out there. Even the suit worn by Chadwick Boseman's title character is a metaphor absorbing all the blows in an opponent can hurt at all before bouncing back with redoubled strength. So it is very interesting. I'll finish it off here. Meanwhile, as white audiences marvel at the richness and variety of an offer, they may discover that it we have been ultimately starved and poisoned for what we watch. Black Panther is to realize that we have been fed a vicious and deadly lie all the time, being told that it was a banquet for us. Well, the whole idea here is the commercialization of culture, and this is what the Black Panther is, presented by Hollywood. There were African productions during the apartheid era that were directed. The actors, etc., were Africans, period. But that was devalued. So we have this particular thing put out by Hollywood. Why is it being put out by Hollywood? Because the movie industry is simply in trouble. And they know that if they put a movie out, they will come. Not only the movie to be streamed out there, and other people will also come. And at the time of Trump, this also plays into it, that progressive people will watch it. We don't have the numbers now that there was one time when Hollywood, the studios, rang supreme. That is not the case anymore, period. Anyway, we didn't want to get too far off of this. We need to finish up here with the University of Virginia, and then we'll do the, well, not as bad a time, we'll do the sports. And we have to find the, oh, here we are. Anyway, this is from Larry Sabato's shop, the Center for Politics. Public rates of presidents, candidate Reagan and Obama are at the top, Nixon, Johnson, and it's unfortunate President Johnson should be at the top also. And DJ Trump's too early to rate him. As Americans prepare to celebrate President's Day. This incidentally was on the 5th of February 2018. The Center for Politics and Ipsos collaborated to survey Americans' view of the modern presidents and asked them to rate a dozen presidents who served since the 50s. I'm sure they had difficulty doing this. Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, two most recent presidents, rounded off the top four, while the current anyway, that didn't really matter very much there. They have JFK up there, and it's be interesting to look at the demographics of this on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a terrible, 10 being excellent. Kennedy had the highest average of 6.52 of any post-secondary president, going back to Dwight Eisenhower, known as I Like Ike. The father-son Republican pair of George H.W. Bush and G.W. Bush received exactly the same rating of 5.42. Anyway, let me just go down the chart. It's much easier to do this. JFK at the top, and then Reagan. That's very, very unfortunate there that he is at a party ID. Democrats 7.9 and Republicans 6.2. This is for JFK. For Reagan, the Republicans at 8.3, the Democrats at 5.1. For Barack Obama, he is a 6.15 at this, and the Democrats at 8.65 here, and Republicans at 3.47, and Independents at 6.11. The Bushes at 540, GW and George H.W. Bush, rated at 6.52 by Republicans. This is the first President Bush, the next President Bush at 6.73. Dwight Eisenhower at 500. Jimmy Carter at 470. And that's unfortunate at 5.45, and for Democrats, and 4.18, and 4.65 for Republicans. J.L. Ford was kind of a fluke when he bought with him, and DJ Trump. And to rate Lyndon Johnson lower than DJ Trump said 4.2, is an insult to humanity. LBJ. 4.17, Democrats 4.61. He should be way up there. And at 4.3 for Republicans. Tricky Dick, 3.80 was his rating. Democrats 3.0. Republicans actually rated Tricky Dick at 4.74 above Lyndon Johnson. So it sort of tells you where things are. As for Democrats, they gave President Obama, well, an 8.5. We went through that, so we won't go back. Reflecting on scandal-driven exit from the White House, he earned the lowest rating. That was Tricky Dick. Modern presidential rating by age and gender. John F. Kennedy at 6.78 for males, 6.36 for females, 18 to 34 at 6.8. I'm very surprised at that because they've even heard of him. And, of course, for older people, 7.04 for JFK. Actually, this is 55 plus. They gave Reagan a better at 7.1, Barack Obama at 5.4, younger people at 6.67. This is Barack Obama. He was third at 6.15. Bill Clinton was at 5.7, and 55 and above gave him 5.5. Younger people a little bit more merciful on him at 5.90. H.W. Bush, older people gave him a 5.99. And G.W. Bush 5.83. Dwight Eisenhower, older people gave him a 6.80. He had a 500 rating there. Males are 573 and females 432. Jimmy Carter, older people 55 plus, 5.25. For males, 4.65. Females slightly larger, rating at 4.75. And 4.15, 18s and 32-year-old people. Lyndon Johnson, 55 and older, gave him the best possible rating at 5.10. Males at 4.6. Females slightly lower at 3.78. Younger people 3.57. And the reason here is the recent history disparaging of Lyndon Johnson, and 3.72. Tricky Dick, though, actually, he was 3.56 for 35 to 54. And younger people, 3.40, 3.8 was his overall rating. Respondents' preference choice for presidents right now, assuming all of these presidents were alive, Barack Obama would be at 31, Reagan at 22. It'd be at 58% for Democrats, 3% for Republicans, and Reagan 44%, Republicans 4%, Democrats, Independents 23%. And JFK would be at 16% if he right now, 19% for Democrats and 9% there. And forget about Trump, he's only at 9%. And Bill Clinton at 5% and 2 jail for 1%ers, and the rest of them are way down there, 1%ers and so forth, assuming they were alive and eligible to serve. And this is the poll leads. This question came mostly from strong Democratic support. Nearly 3 of 5 Democrats respondents, 58% would want Barack Obama as president. Amongst Democrats, only Barack Obama. JFK at 19%, Clinton at 1%. The results and methodology are available here, and we'll look at this later. Anyway, 1,004 people were in it, 18 and older, over the continental U.S., Alaska, and Hawaii were interviewed online in English. The Ipsos poll, that's IPSOS, Reuters. We should work for Reuters. Anyway, the credibility of it is a 3.5 there, and the 1 to 10 there, 1 being terrible, 10 being excellent. So you see basically where these are. Let's do the sports now. And how we started this off all relates to what is basically going on. The Cavaliers, incidentally, will have a $300 million payroll if, in fact, Mr. LeBron James remains with the franchise. And then they go down and talk about the salaries here. LeBron James at $35 million, Kevin Love at $24 million, George Hill at $19 million, Tristan Thompson at $17 million, J.R. Smith at $14 million, Jordan Clarkson at $12 million, and Rodney Hood at $12 million also. I'm not sure, but anyway, it sort of goes down to some of the bid players at less than $1 million there, and total salaries $158.9 million, and a luxury tax of $149.2 million there. Let's do the scores. The NBA Thursday, the Nuggets were at the Bucks in Milwaukee. Nuggets won 34-123. The Lakers were at the T-Wolves. T-Wolves won that game 119-111 over the Lakers. To college basketball, number 5 Connecticut was at Houston. Houston won that game 67-62. Number 6 Purdue was at Wisconsin. Wisconsin won the game 57-53. Ohio State at Penn State. It was all Penn State there. Ohio State's ranked number 8, incidentally, 79-56. Loyola Marymount, let's see them. And Gonzaga number 9, 76-49. That was not a game there. Well, we'll see them in March Madness. St. Mary's, number 16, and San Francisco 70-63. They won that contest. Number 17, Arizona, and number 26, Arizona State. It was Arizona 77-70. And finally, Temple and Wichita State, the Strikers. That was 93-86 there. And finally, to the National Hockey League, the Hurricanes and Devils. Devils 5-2. The Rangers and Islanders. Rangers were shut out by the Islanders. The Kings and Penguins. Always followed the Penguins out of Pittsburgh. 3-1. Penguins over the Kings, and Sabres and Senators 3-2. Final in overtime there. Senators win that game. The Senators of Ottawa. And Buffalo has the Sabres. Anyway, the Red Wings of Detroit and the Lightning. Lightning 4-1. The Flames and Predators. Flames 4-3 was the final there. The Capitals and the Wild 5-1. The Capitals over the Wild. The Washington Capital and the Minnesota Wild. The Ducks and Blackhawks in Chicago. The Anaheim Ducks 3-2. They won the game over the Blackhawks. Been around a long time. Canadiens and Coyotes of Arizona and the Montreal Canadiens. The Coyotes won that game in Arizona 5-2. You're warming up out there. The Oilers and Golden Knights of Las Vegas. Golden Knights 4-1 over the Oilers of Edmonton. And finally, the Canucks and Sharks. The Sharks of San Jose and the Canucks of Vancouver. It was all Sharks 4-1 in that contest. This will do it for us. Well, some polling here, but we really don't have much. The Monmouth poll that is in Pennsylvania's 18th special district there. Coney at 49 and Lamb at 46. Not familiar with that. Wednesday there were a lot of pros. That was Thursday. A lot of pros out there. Fox had DJ Trump at 43, PPP at 44. The Economist YouGov online poll 45. The Reuters ISOS poll at 49. That used to be ROPA. And PPP, well, that's Congressional Pro. We don't even mess with those because it doesn't mean anything at all. Generic, wait a minute here. Generic ballot. Economist. Demos up by 4. Meaningless now. Reuters demos up by 9. PPP up by 8. Wrong track up by 13. So in other words, right direction 39. That's pretty much going there. And from Reuters, wrong track. Right direction at 32, wrong track. So by 24. Public approval of the healthcare law. We don't see much of that anymore. For a favorable 47%. Opposed 35%. It used to be the direction around. Favorable up by 12% from PPP. That's the healthcare law now, the Affordable Care Act. This will do it for us. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll see you on the week that was. Hopefully our connection between this right-wing ecosystem with Mr. Gary James in Enid, Oklahoma, Mr. Pruitt, who used to be the Attorney General and the EPA, the White House, and Porter, passing the buck there. Porter, a serial abuser, period. And a number of other people that had posts around that administration that have had to leave, period. So that's some of the news that is out here. And with the presidents, it's an interesting poll, but it doesn't mean very much there. But we go to the mass shooting in Florida. It feels it's back into the Gary James ecosystem and the Pruitt ecosystem, the NRA and so-called Second Amendment situation there. The bigot James and the white supremacists that this Latino Cruz was hanging around with. He got the assault weapon. He got the ammo. Went to back to his school that he'd been thrown out of. And on Valentine's Day, he had a Valentine's Day massacre. Now, those are 17 people, and wounded people did not need to die. And that's the problem right there. The misery index feeds into all of this, and we need to measure that more in the course of human lives, whether it be the shooting here on behalf of the NRA, and this falls on the doorsteps of the Republican Party. They are the ones responsible for the judges. They are the ones responsible for the lack of legislation in the Congress to curb the senseless killing, and on the nation as a whole, not to stand up and demand that this idiocy and lunacy stop, and to call Congress every day. And if just 1 million people would call Congress for 7 days or 30 days, they would get the message, because the phone lines would go down. Just 1 million people could do it on the grassroots level, and perhaps start off with a few million people calling up every day, calling these representatives, calling these senators out on this legislation. But what has happened is the Jameses of the world have dominated. The Cruz of the world trying to put fear into people, and the people that he attacked there were Europeans, were African Americans, were Latinos. This is the sadness of this whole thing. Not one thing I've heard from the Trump administration. They haven't sent their so-called Attorney General Beauregard Sessions there. They don't have that as a priority. It's the same thing with Pruitt. If you go department by department, there is no people before profits there. Why did they get away with it? Because of Ryan, because of McConnell, and the legislative advantage that they hold through voter suppression, scrubbing of voter rolls, outright intimidation. So you don't need to go to this so-called Russian factory. You don't need this. The NRA has a much larger effect on voting and the Koch brothers than, quote-unquote, the Russian Federation or whatever bad actors they put up there. We don't know who they are. They probably represent the oligarchs. But the whole point is that is pointless, period. And the sad situation, there's not an outcry from the administration. There's not an outcry from the government in Oklahoma over James. He's been in business for 44 years, and no one said anything. In fact, there's not been a a complaint. There is an alcohol violation investigation, but that's a different situation. Nonetheless, we will see you on the week that was. We have an open source report coming up this weekend in the cards also. And there is something coming up on BR on the World. We'll be talking about Jacob Zuma, the departed president of South Africa. Good day.
And tonight we're getting new information on a story we first brought you several weeks ago.
And let me tell you, that story spread like wildfire across social media. It involves a restaurant owner in Enid who's accused of discriminating against homosexuals.
Now, that owner, Gary James, is stunningly frank about not allowing homosexuals into his steakhouse.
I've been in business 44 years. I think I can spot a freaker. I really don't want gays around. I don't deal with these people walking down the street with no jobs, welfare. I really don't want gays around. Any man that would compromise his body would compromise anything.
Well, after our story first aired, gay rights supporters all over the country have been weighing in.
This week, News Channel 4's Ashley Kringen took our mobile newsroom back to Enid, and Gary James was not happy to see us.
A little restaurant in Enid, a small Oklahoma town making headlines around the world for racism, bigotry, and hatred.
You owe me an apology. You crucified me.
Remember Gary James? He's the owner and his phone line has been lighting up.
And I've had 1,000 calls from
Now it seems gay Americans are getting a laugh at Gary's expense. Check out this internet restaurant review, calling gary-schicaros, quote, the best gay bar in Oklahoma.
It's a funny approach to wonderful activism. No one's being harmed, and certainly it's raising awareness.
Scott Hamilton runs the Cimarron Alliance Equality Center and believes this can be an opportunity to raise awareness about bigotry in all forms.
It's one of those things that we prefer not to talk about because it's so ugly, and yet not talking about it does not make it go away.
I love freedom of speech, but freedom of speech is one thing, but when you cut that tape to make me look like a real that wasn't fair.
To be clear, we did not put any words in his mouth. We did not design his T-shirt, the one that has the N-word on the front and outrageous slogans on the back and sleeves. James claims we crucified his business, but then told us his T-shirt sales have increased.
My business has improved 25% because of it. But, do I have time to tolerate all those little it's calling?
We received quite a few emails and calls about people having bad experiences at gary-schicaros. A lot of them afraid to speak out because of any backlash, including a former employee who asked that we didn't reveal her identity. Are people scared of him?
I am, to be honest.
This former employee who's talking with us because we agreed to hide her identity says things got ugly after James found out about her biracial children.
He walked over and looked at my phone and said, well, that's a and I turned and I said, that's a child.
Harassment, she says, continued, not just at work, but off the clock as well.
I saw you drop your off at school, and I said, that's enough. Enough is enough. You can say what you want to about me, and you can have your opinion all you want to, but you leave children out of it. They're innocent.
She has no proof of employment. Our source says James paid her illegally in cash. And that may not be his only infraction. According to these Garfield County court documents, Gary-Schicaros is at the center of an undercover investigation involving serving alcohol to minors. This mom is speaking out because she is proud of her hometown. She loves Enid and believes it's time for James to retire his views and close up shop.
Their generation will be gone soon, and the new generation will take over, and it's a very colorful new generation.
In Enid, Ashley Kringen, News Channel 4.
We checked with the Attorney General's office. They tell us so far no one has filed a single complaint against Gary James or his business. Topping news at 4:30. There's a new proposal to strengthen Oklahoma marriages. You may already know our divorce rate is dismal, the worst in the nation. It's according to 2011 figures from the Census Bureau, followed by Arkansas and Alaska. But would marriage last if we simply made divorce a lot tougher to get?